Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the quiz review for Philosophy 210, Critical Thinking. This is week 6, I think, and this is Professor Curran. I thought I'd give you an opportunity to walk through some sample problems in preparation for the quiz this week, and I hope that helps everybody out. Once again, kind of new to this video thing, so please bear with me. I'm going to walk through some sample problems. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to give me a call. The first problem we have here, the first question, we're going to look to see if indeed a logical fallacy has been committed here, thus invalidating this particular statement. So what we have here, and I'll read it for you if you can't see it, it says either we have prayer in our public schools or the moral fabric of society will disintegrate. The choice should be obvious. Okay? Now, in deciding if indeed a fallacy has been committed, a good place to start is to look at the 4 choices here and see indeed if any of them apply to this fallacy. This one is pretty straightforward in the fact that you do have the word either and or in the fallacy, which implies that there are only 2 possible things here, that if one happens, the other must happen. Now, certainly the moral fabric of our society can disintegrate with or without school prayer. It's not the school prayer? Yeah. Prayer in the public schools. That is not the single condition that will make that happen. So in this case, if you get a question like that, the correct answer, you have an either or fallacy. Okay? So let me move on to the next one, and we'll see where that takes us. Okay, so if we look at this next one, we have another example, and basically it says that molecules are in constant random motion. The Statue of Liberty is composed of molecules. Therefore, the Statue of Liberty is in constant random motion. Now, in this case, what you have here is what is called a fallacy of composition. The fallacy of composition says that, in essence, if something is true of an entity, it is also true of its component parts. Okay? Just because the Statue of Liberty is composed of molecules does not mean that all the properties of the molecules necessarily apply to the Statue of Liberty. So if you get one like this, that indeed is a fallacy of composition. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. Oops. Okay. Here we go. The next one we have says, people are driving their cars like maniacs tonight. There must be a full moon. Okay? In this case, this is a pretty obvious one too. What you have here is what is called a post hoc ergo propter hoc, which in Latin just means something causes something. Okay? In this case, the implication in the statement is that the full moon is causing people to drive like maniacs. Okay? There's no evidence or proof that that is the case. So in this case, the fallacy has been committed that the full moon is causing the bad driving. So post hoc ergo propter hoc would be the answer to that one. Okay, let's do another one. And you may find some very similar to this on your quiz, so I'm hoping you'll find this a pretty useful thing. Opinion poll question. This is a great one. Do you favor more money for welfare programs, or do you feel we should just let people starve on the streets? Now, I'm not sure how you want to answer that, but the fallacy that's committed here is pretty obvious. What's happened here? Okay? In essence, we have 2 things, and we're implying that those are the only 2 conditions that could exist. Saying that, if you don't agree with welfare, people are going to be on the street starving. So, in this case, this is another example of the either-or fallacy. Either you agree with welfare, or everybody's going to be starving out on the streets. There are many reasons for people starving out on the streets. A lack of welfare is not the single causal factor for that. So that's the fallacy that's been committed there. Okay? We call up the next question here. Let's see how we're doing. If you're getting these pretty easily, that's good news. So, let me make this one up a little bit higher. Okay, hold on. This one says, A woman's place is in the home. That's the way it's always been, so that's the way it ought to be. Again, this is a pretty straightforward one, pretty easy one. This is a fallacy of tradition, assuming that just because something has always been a certain way, it must be right, and it must always continue that way. So that one's pretty straightforward. If you get one like that on the quiz, that's the way you want to answer it. Now this one's a little bit interesting. It says here, each and every brick in the completely brick-faced Wainwright building, okay, has a reddish-brown color. Therefore, the Wainwright building has a reddish-brown color. Okay. If the building is completely made of brick, and it says it is, and every brick is reddish-brown, what color is the building? In this case, the correct answer is no fallacy. That would be true, right? If every brick were red and the building were made completely of bricks, the color of the building would be, ding, 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 red. Okay, very good. So in this case, no fallacy has been committed. This is a perfectly rational, reasonable, valid statement. So you might get one that's tricky like that. Or you might get this one. It says on this particular example, and again, I hope you are taking notes on these, because these, I pulled these right off of some previous quizzes, so you might get lucky and a few of these might recur on the quiz, so that'd be awesome for you. Anyway, this one says, every member of the Delta Club is over 70 years old. Therefore, the Delta Club itself must be over 70 years old. Now, what fallacy has been committed here? Okay? If you carefully take a look at this, this again is what is called a fallacy of composition. Fallacy of composition says it assumes that if something is true of the part, it is true to the whole, and vice versa. Okay? This says just because the club is 70 years old does not mean that the members are all 70 years old, or vice versa. If all the members are 70, doesn't mean the club is 70 years old. Okay? So that's a fallacy of composition. And next, if that wasn't fun enough, now you get to this one. This one says, criminals are basically stupid because anyone who isn't basically stupid wouldn't be a criminal. Okay? Intuitively, you know that's probably wrong, right? So, but why? It's not an appeal to authority because we're not talking about any experts on criminology. It's not a genetic fallacy, and it's not a slippery slope. In this case, this is what's called circular reasoning, where it just kind of leads you around and around, because it's just basically, if you're stupid, you're a criminal. If you're a criminal, you're stupid, and you get locked into that and keep spinning around. So in this case, this is a fallacy of what is called circular reasoning. So if you get one like that, that's what you're looking for. This is one of my favorites. It says, raising a child is like growing a tree. Isn't that nice? If only it were that simple. Sometimes violent things, such as cutting off branches, have to be done to force the tree to grow straight. Similarly, corporal punishment must sometimes be inflicted on children to force them to develop properly. Okay? Now, whether or not you agree with corporal punishment, I don't. It is not the issue here. The issue is what's wrong with this particular statement here. Okay? This is a pretty straightforward one as well. This is what is called a false analogy. Let me clue everybody in who isn't a parent. Raising a child, in fact, is not like growing a tree. Okay? I know that's a big revelation for many of us out there. And you see these all the time in advertising, in politics, these types of false analogies that are used to get people to believe someone's point of view. Okay? Raising a child, in fact, is like raising a child. There's a lot of stuff you can do to a tree. I love this one, like cutting off a branch. That's great. Next time my son does something, I just whack his arm off, and he'll grow up and be like a wonderful person. So that one's pretty obviously false, so that's what's called a false analogy. All right, very good. Next. Okay. Bit of a long one here, so I'll just read it along with us. On Friday, I took Virginia out to dinner. She told me that if I wasn't interested in a serious relationship, I should forget about dating her. On Saturday, I took Margie to a film. When we discussed it afterward over a drink, she couldn't understand why I wasn't interested in babies. Women are all alike. All they want is a secure marriage. Okay. What doesn't have... Well, okay, so it must be something must be wrong with it. What could it be? In this case, what you have is what is called a hasty generalization. From two examples, can you extrapolate to the entire population? If you've had two, if you're driving down the road and you get cut off by two women drivers, okay, does that mean that all women drivers are bad drivers? All right, maybe that's a bad example. But even so, anytime you have one or two examples and you try to extrapolate to a larger population, that is generally what's called a hasty generalization. Okay? Thus, meaning this entire argument it's committed a logical fallacy. You cannot assume with any degree of certainty that this is correct. Okay? So, let's see what's next. And again, I'm hoping you're finding these useful. If you're getting these relatively easily, you're probably ready to take the quiz. If you're not, you might want to go back, take a look at a few, and listen to my explanations for them, see if they make sense. If they don't make sense, again, you're welcome to give me a call, see what I can do, maybe I can help you. But anyway, and I apologize for the lighting here. I'm trying to use this projector thing, and I'm sure it's keeping me in shadow, which is okay. Of course animals have rights. Just look at how powerless they are in comparison with modern humans. This is a strange one. Of course animals have rights. Just look how powerless they are in comparison with modern humans. This is an example of what is called circular reasoning. It's not an appeal to any one of these, but it is kind of just leading you around and around that if you assume that animals are powerless, and therefore they would have rights, although I don't even really see a connection between that one. But that is an example of circular reasoning. Okay. Here's a good one. Okay. See if there's anything wrong with this one. The best students make the best grades. Therefore, requiring instructors to give high grades will undoubtedly produce better students. That one obviously is going to be false. Why? What's wrong with that? Again, in this case, we have what is called a false cause, or in Latin, again, post hoc ergo propter hoc. So you can impress your friends by throwing around Latin phrases this week. That's always cool. In this case, the implication is that what causes the student to be good? The high grades, or is it the student causing the grades to be high? See, they're making a cause here. They're saying it's the grade that determines whether or not the student's good. But that's not the case. It's the good student that determines the grade. So the cause here has been kind of flipped, and therefore you have a false cause. Okay. We're almost home, folks. Here's another interesting one. We all know that induction will provide dependable results in the future because it has always worked in the past. Whatever has consistently worked in the past will continue to work in the future. And we know that's true because it has been established by induction. Okay? This one's pretty clear. This is clearly an example of circular reasoning. Okay? We know induction works because it's been proven by induction. So that one's pretty straightforward. It's just leading you around in a circle. Okay? So far so good on that one. Okay, next. This says, Professor Glazebrook's theory about the origin of the Martian craters is undoubtedly true. Rudolf Orkin, the great concert pianist, announced his support of the theory in the newspaper this morning. Okay? You see this happen a lot in advertising, this type of reasoning. This is called an appeal to a false authority, or in Latin it's ad verecundiam, if you like to throw cool Latin phrases around. This Rudolf Orkin guy, he's a concert pianist, so if he says Mozart's concerto is the greatest piece of music on the planet, does that have some degree of validity? Well, yeah, he's a concert pianist, he has expertise there. But does the concert pianist have expertise in telling you that something about the Martian landscape is true or not? No. He has no authority to speak on that. Okay? Just like if you see a commercial with Tiger Woods saying you should use Tylenol. Okay? If Tiger Woods stands up and says this is the best set of golf clubs I've ever used. Okay, I can buy that. He's an expert golfer. If he says these are good golf clubs, maybe they are. Okay? But he has no expertise with regards to pain medication. On the other hand, if the Surgeon General said to use Tylenol, okay, maybe you should use Tylenol. All right? So in this case, you have what is called an appeal to a false authority. Okay? Good. Okay, moving on. We're almost there. All right. Okay. The next one says, white sheep eat more than black sheep because there are more of them. Okay. So I guess if you had 20 white sheep and 3 black sheep, sure, the white sheep would eat more whatever the heck sheep eat. Therefore, it says, this white sheep eats more than that black sheep. Okay? What you have here, friends, is a fallacy of division. Okay? You can't assume what is true of the total is also true of its component parts to a degree. The reason the white sheep eat more than the black sheep is just there are more of them. Okay? That does not mean that any one, in a one-on-one, that would be the same case. If each sheep ate 3 pounds of food and you had 10 white sheep and 3 black sheep, you already know they each eat an equal amount of food. But if you total them up, as what has happened here, it does appear on the surface that the white sheep might, on a per capita, which per capita per person is a dumb phrase to use for sheep, but it's the best I could think of on the spot, that does not hold true. So in this case, this is what is called a fallacy of division. Okay? You've taken the whole and divided it into component parts. You can't necessarily do that. Okay. Or you might get one like this on the quiz. Rhubarb pie is a dessert. Okay, I'll buy that. Therefore, whoever eats a rhubarb pie eats a dessert. Interesting that they only gave me 3 choices on this one. So, okay, I must have cut off the other one. And I think I cut off the right answer because this is no fallacy. That would be absolutely true. If all rhubarb pie is a dessert, I eat a rhubarb pie, therefore I am eating a dessert. Okay? So that one is no fallacy at all. That's perfectly valid, perfectly reasonable syllogism if you wrote it up that way. Okay. Here's another example. Terrorists from the Middle East have crossed our borders and traveled through the country at will. Ooh. Obviously, the Immigration Service has not been doing its job. Anyone have a problem with that one? If so, why? In this case, and some of these, by the way, are relatively similar in cause, and you got to think real carefully about what the primary reason is that makes the statement into a fallacy and not a good syllogism. In this case, this is an appeal to the wrong authority. Okay? What's the job of the Immigration Service? The Immigration Service are not the people to check people at the border. That's not their job. Okay? So you're blaming, in this case, the wrong authority for something that's happened here. Okay? So that is an appeal to an inappropriate authority. Okay, only a couple more left on my little review. I'm hoping you're enjoying this. A line is composed of points. Points have no length. Therefore, a line has no length. Well, we know that is obviously not true. And why, though? Certainly not tradition. That doesn't make any sense. We're not jumping on a bandwagon here. It's a fallacy of composition. Again, you're assuming the properties of one component apply to the properties of the next. Properties of the points are not necessarily the properties of a line. So, in this case, you've committed a fallacy of composition. Okay? Next. Only a couple more. Here's another one. This one says, I hope you guys can read these things at home. I don't know if you can or not, but I hope you can. This one says, the 20-story Carson building is constructed of concrete blocks. Okay? Each and every concrete block in the structure can withstand an earthquake of 9.5 on the Richter scale. Therefore, the building can withstand an earthquake of 9.5 on the Richter scale. Okay. This is really tricky, so think carefully about this one for a minute. Okay? What makes this argument false? Okay? In this case, what you have here, it's not a fallacy of division, okay? Because we're not breaking it down into component parts. And ironically, it's not a fallacy of composition either. Because we are not saying in this case that what is true of this is true of that. In fact, what we are saying here is we have, in essence, a hasty generalization. Let me explain that. Let me take a little bit of talking through. Why is it a hasty generalization? Because it does say each and every block. Okay, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the structures now. I'm not talking about the blocks. Right? I'm basically saying that if some of the blocks can withstand an earthquake, the whole thing can withstand an earthquake. And I don't know that yet. I know the blocks can, but I don't know if the entire structure can. So in this case, I have made a hasty generalization. And finally, the last one. It says here the secretaries have asked us to provide a lounge area where they can spend their coffee breaks. This request will have to be refused. If we give them lounge areas, next they're going to be asking for spas and swimming pools. Then it'll be racquetball courts and tennis courts and fitness centers. Expenditures for these facilities for the secretaries will drive the company into bankruptcy. Okay, really easy here. This is clearly what is called a slippery slope. The slippery slope fallacy, which we talked about in our little lecture for the week, is basically when you start with one little itty-bitty thing and then you just snowball it into some super exaggerated example in order to get your point across. Okay? If indeed the tiny lounge area in and of itself may or may not bankrupt the company. We don't know that. But nor do we know whether or not just giving them one thing will inevitably lead them to ask for all sorts of other things. So what we're looking at is trying to make arguments that are basically sound in and of themselves. And we want to get really good at picking out some of these logical fallacies. So anyway, that's my 20-question review for the quiz. My hunch is hopefully if you've watched this first before you take the quiz, you may find some of these problems particularly helpful. I hope you do. Keep me posted on whether or not these videos are remotely helpful, and if they are, I'll keep doing them. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you all again soon. If you run into any issues or problems, again, please feel free to call me. Have a great week. Thanks, everybody.